Thank you. Thanks always to the Dinner in Hell band.
And the people in our studio audience, thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right, good evening and welcome to another episode of Dinner in Hell. Here on Dinner in Hell, you'll hear two untrained amateur historians discussing history's atrocious underbelly. I am one of those amateur historians, Brad the Impaler, and with me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, the real Ron Maiden.
Hello, Brad, and it's great to be here as always, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today.
All right, tonight, we're going to switch things up a little bit. We've been talking about execution methods, but now we're going to talk about something that's probably equivalent in the terms of horror and much higher in the terms of scale. We're gonna discuss an ancient battle.
Which battle is that?
That would be the battle between Carthage and Rome during the Second Punic War, the Battle of Cannae. I've always been fascinated by ancient battles, battle in general, but ancient battles specifically because of how brutal it must have been. You think back to an ancient battle, and it's you and a guy in front of you. You're trying to stick a piece of metal in him until he's dead, and he's trying to stick a piece of metal in you until you're dead.
So up close and personal.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult to put yourself in that kind of situation.
And let's say you drop your weapon, and now you have to now you're using your bare hands and choking the guy, possibly. Like, you're not just sliding metal into his soft flesh.
Yeah, I am as intimate as that would be. You're absolutely right. It got even more brutal than that.
Yeah. And then you got to pick up a weapon. Like, okay, next. And there's a guy right behind you that possibly just got stabbed or is about to stab you. Like, it's crowded.
Yeah, I've heard it say that being an ancient soldier is large periods of zero danger and then really, really intense periods of a very high danger.
And when you hear of like military commanders or generals in these wars that have been through multiple wars, it's like, well, how badass is this guy? Because what are the chances you're going to live throughout this thing? I mean, you're not like in an armored tank. You're, like you said, you're on foot, you're on a horse next to another man.
And the Roman leaders,
they fought with the war. They weren't like up on the hill.
Yeah, ancient leaders generally would fight with their armies right at the front.
So if you've been in two wars, like, I've been in two wars, and like that's like you're like a stud. Yeah,
that doesn't mean you're back at HQ going over intelligence documents and making decisions based on that. You're at the front calling the shots and actively fighting. I'm
sure there's signal makers involved up on hills with flags. Like, I think I saw in like The Hobbit, the new Lord of the Rings crap. Like, they have the guy up and he's like, he's like doing different flags, and then different orcs would come running. Like, there's probably communication that way. As
you'll see, the orcs and magic played a huge part in the Battle of Cannae.
So we got Romans facing orcs. And
Carthage had allied with the High Elves.
It's a tale of good and evil. I mean, if you want to put it in a nutshell. So that's our show. So this wasn't just any battle, though. This was one that had a...
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Battle of Cannae, that took place during the Second Punic War, which is the second of two wars between the civilizations of Republican Rome and Carthage.
Where are we at in the world as far as... Where is Rome based and where is Carthage based?
Rome is situated on the Italian peninsula, and there's several other city-states around, but they're highly dependent on and allegiant to Rome. Carthage was on the Iberian Peninsula, which is modern-day Portugal and Spain, as well as a good portion of the north coast of Africa.
I thought they were more African that bled into Europe. No?
But I know Hannibal was based in Spain.
Okay.
And that was Carthage's sort of home, like their capital.
Okay.
We're talking about the Second Punic War, and that lasted from 218 BCE to 201 BCE. So basically what sparked everything off the second time is there was a city on the Iberian coast that was allegiant to Rome, and there was sort of an inner struggle inside the city between a Carthaginian and a Roman faction over who would retain control of the city. At some point, assassins assassinate almost all of the Carthaginian faction inside the city, which prompts Hannibal to lay siege to it.
Like he retaliates to this.
Yeah, he comes to the aid, I suppose, of the assassinated Carthaginian faction and takes the city. An early agreement between Rome and Carthage sort of kept this city off limits. So as soon as that happened, both sides know that it's about to pop off, like it's on. They've broken their truce, so they're at war as soon as Hannibal takes this town. And Hannibal takes his army inland through France and over the Alps. At the same time, the Romans invade over water the Iberian Peninsula. They bring it to the Carthaginian homeland. But we're going to be focusing on Hannibal here.
Yeah, we haven't discussed... You've mentioned Hannibal twice now, but we haven't really got into his backstory. He's not no ordinary leader.
Yeah, Hannibal is regarded by most people as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. He was an extremely talented tactician and commander. And this is definitely his sort of most heroic period in his history. It's definitely what he's known for.
And it's not only his most heroic, but it's one of the most.
Absolutely. It was a fantastic military feat. His counterparts from the Roman Republic were the two consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Caius Terentius Varro. The Republican Rome is very interesting in part because they have two consuls. And consuls are the highest single office outside of the Senate. I just have struggle imagining America with two presidents.
So the responsibilities of a consul, they had power to command war and also do like city governing. So the consuls, let's just go by their last names if you don't mind, because their first names are tricky. And if you were to do an internet search on these consuls of the Battle of Cannae, you'll see their full names. I mean, come on, don't put us through this.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling you time and time again, this is all on Wikipedia.
So say their names one last time so everyone knows their full names.
The consuls were Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Caius Terentius Varro.
So let's get into these guys real quick because the fun part's going to be Hannibal. So Paulus actually had a military he grew up in a military family. He was around military. He has knowledge of it.
He had pretty extensive command experience already as well.
And he's one of the guys that are going to be in the mix. Like he's not like we said, he's not going to be up high on a perch looking down at the battle, like observing. He'll fight. He's
both of the Roman consuls as well as Hannibal fought in the battle.
Now the other consul Varro, he was between the two. He was like the least experienced of any kind of combat, right?
He was definitely the least experienced out of the three.
Like
especially in terms of command, he had very little command experience.
Like zero, right?
Yeah.
Like this Battle of Cannae, which is like a legendary battle, is this guy's first battle.
Yeah, his first run out, first time at bat.
So as far as Hannibal goes, now we're going to get into Hannibal, who these guys are facing, who are moving in, taking over their supply cities. Hannibal, this dude his father was the commander before him. Wasn't he the commander of? He was
the Carthaginian commander in the First Punic War.
Okay. So Hannibal's dad was the leader of the Carthaginians, fought in battles. Hannibal was a boy begging to go along with him to these battles, like is in Hannibal's blood. War is in Hannibal's blood. He was born for this shit.
Yeah, as were lots of people.
So you got Varro, who's over here consul for the Romans, and it's his first battle, and he's facing this dude Hannibal, who's been like at battle camp since he's a little boy. Like imagine Boy Scouts, Carthaginian Boy Scouts, like what you learn like over in as not modern times. You make a Pinewood Derby car. Back when you're a kid, then you're like stabbing pigs and shit with weapons, and like
you're probably fighting constantly.
The dude was probably trained to kill and in the war room since he was a little kid.
Yeah, I imagine for the most part it's all these people do.
Yeah, so Good luck with that, Varro.
All right, so Hannibal crosses the Alps famously with his army, and he loses about half of it. He comes out the other side of the Alps into the Italian peninsula with about 40,000 infantry, about 10,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants.
You said how many were lost in the Alps?
About half of his army was lost.
How many elephants do you think died in that frozen tundra, man?
I did read that most of them died crossing the mountains, and there were a few left that were used in battle to great effect and were a great strength of the Carthaginians, but over the course of the war, the Romans were able to counter them.
Also, the Romans, it turns out, Romans never really used the elephants on...
Mm-hmm. They would capture them, but I don't think they could figure out how to train them. But thinking about how horrifying taking part in an ancient battle would be just when you're up against men and horses.
Yeah, you're
an elephant charging down on you.
You can plan for men and horses. You know, you have an idea of what's ahead of you, and it's not like elephants.
Elephants are not slow.
Yeah, and they're not going to stop. They're just going to run over you.
It's mind blowing to me to try and put myself in the position of someone steering down a charging elephant that's part of a line of troops with guys on its back ready to jump down and stab you in the back after the elephant breaks the lines. It's got to be one of the most terrifying things that's ever been seen on the field of battle in the ancient times. It has to be.
And it's not the guys on the back of the elephant with the spears, spearing guys and shooting arrows or whatever. It's the fact that the elephant is trampling men. Like they use the elephant to... Imagine how many guys you can kill with an elephant if you're just trampling alone.
Oh, they've got to be incredibly effective.
And like we said, the battle is a crowd. You just take the elephant right through the middle. Just look out, coming through. And like soldiers were hacking off they don't know what to do. They're hacking off the trunk. So you got this elephant. Dudes are on its back.
Pissed,
he doesn't, and
bleeding.
He's not
thrashing around.
And now he's got half a trunk and he's like ready to fucking like stick tusks in people.
Yeah, God,
You're not gonna be able
what a nightmare.
And those elephants once they got wounded like that, they would attack their own team. They didn't give a shit anymore about Carthaginian or Roman. They were just pissed and attacking everyone. So your elephant gets wounded, it'll turn on you and be mad at you too.
Yeah, several 1,000 pounds of pissed off, just thrashing around. It's frightening.
Imagine how you could decorate one like fucking guar.
You could you could make it terrifying, even more so than it already is.
You could put armor on it, or just like cool ass looking armor.
Airbrush like a badass wizard on the side of
it. You go to like the elephant show, like hydraulics, like Crenshaw Mafia,
bouncing on the hooves.
Yeah, elephants like, check out my elephant stand on two legs, like Barnum and Bailey. How'd you do that? I whip it, cool, and poke it. Poor elephant.
Oh, so Hannibal takes the Carthaginian army out of the Alps, and he wins a couple of quick victories on his campaign through the Italian peninsula. And this beginning stage sort of culminates with him taking the supply depot at Cannae. And this is very concerning to Rome because their supplies might get cut off.
Yeah.
So the Romans respond with what would appear to be an overwhelming force. Generally, both consuls weren't leading armies in the same place. Generally, they were both conducting separate campaigns in different parts of the world. To show how seriously they were taking Hannibal's land invasion, both consuls together leave Rome with an army of about 80,000 infantry and 6,400 cavalry.
Wow.
So a big army. Now, another interesting thing about this is the way things worked when both consuls were at an army is they took turns being in charge every day.
Yeah.
So day one, Paulus is in charge. Day two, Varro's in charge.
Yeah.
And it's invariable.
So
it just
weird.
switches back and forth. Yeah.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm. They don't each take a command of half of it. One guy, alternate days.
Like they don't take a vote. They could just run it together.
Yeah, but I think it's a tendency that the consuls don't get along with one another. And so another thing about the battle is both sides sort of occupied good defensive positions. So it wasn't really in either side's best interest to attack. Both sides were better off defending.
Right.
And it sort of became a waiting game for a few days.
So you're saying like both of them are like have high ground.
Yeah. The Romans didn't want to attack because they were outnumbered in the cavalry. And the Carthaginians didn't want to attack because they were severely outnumbered in their infantry.
Let's talk again about the size of the armies. It was around 80,000 Romans. Imagine that. It's like if you were to imagine every single sold out seat in a football arena. If you imagine in a modern NFL football arena, that's about 70,000. So like you're thinking this size army coming up against how many?
40,000.
So twice the size.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Carthaginians with 10,000 cavalry and the Romans with 6,400 or so.
Okay. And for those that aren't totally hip on this lingo, cavalry would be horseback.
Yeah, men on horseback.
Infantry would be men on foot with weapons. Elephant is like a giant animal that has... it's a mammal. It's got a trunk. It's like mostly it's hairless. That good description?
Yeah.
You can see them at zoos.
A prehensile nose.
Only in zoos. You can see them at zoos, not in the wilderness. If you're lucky, there's like 10.
Or if you want your heart broken, you can go watch them in Ong Bak.
What's that?
It's a kung fu movie. With Tony Jaa. You don't like fucking kung fu movies?
The story of Ricky O is one of my favorites. God damn it.
Ricky O, very solid.
Ricky, yeah, Ricky, go, Ricky. The crowd. Yeah, Ricky, you can do it, Ricky. Anyways.
Okay, so the Roman army was more or less equipped with javelins and spears. They had body armor, too. The Carthaginians were composed of a sort of a less homogeneous group of people. The Carthaginians had various arms like spears, different types of swords, slashing swords, thrusting swords, and the Gauls in the Carthaginian army famously wear no body armor.
Dudes are rolling around in sweatpants suits.
Yeah,
flannel.
The Gauls
flannel
were,
coat, flannel shirt.
The Gauls were absolutely people that the Romans would have referred to as barbarians.
Hey man, I made this out of deer skin. When you say barbarian, what do you mean by barbarian?
Basically not Roman. If you're not Roman, you're a barbarian. Barbarian basically is just something that Romans called not Roman people.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Conan the Barbarian. He was
the Cimmerian. Yeah.
Conan was one of the most famous barbarians of our generation.
Yeah, he defeated the Wizard Lord.
Yeah, if you think about the Romans are carrying spears, I was thinking that's probably a pretty efficient weapon. I mean, if you're shooting an arrow, you could miss, and then you don't have to arrow, and you have to reload. If you're using a sword, you're within 3 feet of this guy.
Yeah.
If you use a spear, you could have maybe an 8-foot spear, hold it at the end, and just hink, hink, just keep poking away from it 8 feet away.
Yeah, if the Gauls are in front of you.
And you're not losing your arrow. You're not going chasing down arrows. Give my arrow back.
Yeah, but going up against the Gauls with no armor would also have a pretty intense psychological effect on the Romans.
Like these dudes are showing up with nothing. Yeah. You know, also...
And I imagine they'd fight like madmen if they're crazy enough to go out without body armor against people who do have it.
When you're talking about the Carthaginians, what they're equipped with, like as far as armor goes, a lot of them were wearing armor that they had picked up off of battlefields from previous wars. So some of these Carthaginians were wearing actual Roman armor, and when the Romans finally faced these Carthaginians in this battle, they're wearing Roman armor. Like, it's confusing. Like, it fucked with them a little bit. Just like,
yeah, I believe it.
I wonder if Hannibal's like, everybody wear Roman. Like, we're gonna.
All right, we're gonna meet here. Don't forget to wear Roman.
If you have anything Roman, let's get it all in a pile. Let's get inventory on helmets. We want like at least 8 full Roman uniforms.
Just talk with your hands while you're getting ready to face them in the battle lines. It'll throw them off.
Listen, you're going to pick up, you're going to wear Roman armor, you're going to be carrying a pizza pie. Okay, you're going to blend in perfect with these guys.
We're going to need you in tracksuits. We're going to see lots of gold chains.
You Gauls over there, you don't wear nothing. You're weird with your non-armor ass. Run around in cardboard suits, refrigerator box.
All right, so they're at this standoff. Neither side really wants to attack. But the consuls are alternating on various days. So Paulus, sort of the elder statesman, is calm and in control, and Varro's untested. He's a little wilder. He wants to attack. Paulus is trying to keep him in line. So
I think Paulus knew better because Paulus had the experience. So he's like, you don't listen to me, Varro. I fucking know how this shit plays out. Chill.
Yeah, he didn't want to attack. Varro did.
Because he was smart.
Mm-hmm.
Varro was like, well, let's do this. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Also smart is Hannibal.
Hell yeah.
He waited until it was Varro's turn in the morning to take power, and then he attacked some Roman camps and harassed like the people getting water and stuff like that, attacked all of them.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what the conversation in the Roman tents would have been like that night.
So it's Paulus's day, who's the military-minded one.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, they ambush these guys that are just getting water for the troops and the horses and for themselves.
Yeah, in the night.
And they crush them like
in the night,
and they're out of there, inciting pressing Varro to be like, yes, right now, this is go time. Everybody out.
In the morning, Varros takes control. He's the one in charge, and he leads an assault on Hannibal's position, and he attacks. This was in the morning. Most ancient battles tended to take place first thing in the morning. So because of the way Hannibal had set himself up, the Roman armies charging across the fields with the sun in their eyes. Low in the sky, directly in their faces.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the wind was also at Hannibal's back. So it's blowing dust and stuff right into the faces of the Roman army as they're coming across the field. Not set up for success from the beginning. But still, they had an exceptionally overwhelming infantry force. If I were picking winners and losers before this thing kicks off, even at the deficits they start at, I'd still pick the Roman Empire.
Right.
I'd still bet on them. But they were up against Hannibal. And as we said before, he's one of the special ones. You know, maybe not Michael Jordan, maybe not, but definitely Bill Russell.
Clyde Drexler.
Clyde Drexler.
He's kind of like that little lower Jordan, like not as good as Jordan, but could still like get up and shoot.
Well, if you want, we can debate about how Bill Russell is the greatest NBA player of all time. I was just going with Michael Jordan so that everyone would get it. But Michael Jordan is not the greatest basketball player of all time. Bill Russell is.
Right. I thought you were saying he wasn't the greatest leader of all time.
Yeah, I don't think I'd put Hannibal number one.
Right.
But he's up there.
Yeah.
And the Roman consuls are not.
Yeah.
Especially not Varro.
It would be awesome to be a soldier and you're a Roman soldier and you're like, God, I hope it's Paulus' command today. I just do not feel like frickin' battling today. We're up late dancing.
Oh, it's a Varro day. I guess I'll hang out in the back if I can.
When it's Varro day, like everyone's on edge. They're like, God damn, we go to war today. It's Varro day.
Like you actually were like, you know what? Nothing's been happening here for a few days. I'm just going to go to bed early. I don't feel like partying with these guys. Drink too much. And then you wake up to the news like, oh, fuck, it's Varro day and we're supposed to fight now.
Great. Looking forward to it. Well, we'll win.
Yeah. Well, they didn't count on being up against Hannibal, and Hannibal, in a stroke of genius, did something that seems crazy at first, and he spread his infantry line very thin in the center. And the Romans had done the opposite. Their center was very dense, and they were attempting to break through Hannibal's line to scatter them and then separate them and win the battle. But what Hannibal did is he extended the center of his line out to form a semicircle, a protruding semicircle. And he was able somehow to maintain the discipline of the thin line of troops to begin a controlled retreat as soon as the Roman infantry attacked.
So the Romans are just charging down the battlefield. So let's say they're in lines and it's like a rectangular square shape. And then you have the Carthaginians who are starting to do like a half circle. As the Romans are charging against this line, part of the half circle is walking backwards and running backwards. As the Romans move in, the Carthaginians retreat slightly. That allows the tail end of the half circle to envelop the Roman army. Now the Roman army is surrounded.
The
freaking smart, man.
Yeah,
the retreat part is the key.
Mm-hmm. The center of Hannibal's line instead of breaking, absorbed the push from the dense Roman line, especially at that point.
Yeah.
And funneled them in, packed them in on both sides. They fell back, and the portion of the line we're talking about where he did this maneuver is right in the center. And on the both flanks, the cavalry engaged one another. The cavalry engagements were, by all reports, extremely fierce, but the greater numbers of the Carthaginians proved to be the deciding factor pretty quickly. And the Carthaginian cavalry was able to subdue and slaughter a large number of the Roman cavalry. And after they did this, they were able to turn and attack the Roman flanks. So this further reinforced this funnel that the main body of the Roman army was pouring itself into. At the crucial moment in the center, Hannibal gave the order for some of his most highly trained shapes that were on the edges of the semicircle to advance and attack. And when they did this, it's called a double pincer movement. A pincer movement is just a maneuver that cuts through or around to try and surround your enemy. The double pincer is just doing it on both sides.
Okay.
What followed after this pincer movement was a complete double envelopment. The Roman army was surrounded by the Carthaginian army, and they were packed together, like body to body, shoulder to shoulder, crammed.
Like no room to swing your sword. No room to move your arms around.
Like the worst giant, trampling, chaotic, insane crowd you can imagine. Because I don't think it would have been long until all of them realized what was going on.
Yeah, because the guys in the center don't see what the guys on the edge see. Imagine like the penguins all crowding together in the Antarctic.
And the guys all around the edge are fighting.
The guys in the middle are like, hey, what's going on out there on the edge, man? Like, you guys are doing shit. I see dust, smoke, and dust. Not smoke, but I see dust in the air. Blood flying. Because we're all in here like cramped like penguins in the Antarctic.
What followed was basically a moving wall of death on four sides in the form of the Carthaginian army. And that resulted in something like 600 legionaries dying a minute until the sun went down.
We're talking 600 a minute until the sun went down?
Yeah, all day was Carthaginian soldiers basically just slaughtering Roman soldiers. And the casualties will make that apparent. The Roman casualties were anywhere from 50,000 to 70,000 killed in action and 4,000 to 14,000 captured.
Lucky them.
It would be just an insanely hard day of work to kill that many people.
I want to ask you, just to put yourself in one of either side's position, and you get a mouthful of someone else's warm blood squirted in your mouth.
Oh, you'd be covered. It would be everywhere.
That's a taste. Imagine that. A warm blast of, like someone got cut while you're like screaming, ah, and all of a sudden like squirt, mouthful of blood. You're like, this is fucking battle now. This is what I came here for. It's what I signed up for. Is this kind of experience. It's going to make me a man.
The vast majority of the Roman soldiers that showed up there that day did not leave. Including Consul Paulus.
Right.
Varro did get away.
Yeah, like we said earlier in the show, they fought with their men, and Paulus didn't leave. Varro did. Now Varro's like, I got some experience now. I got some experience. Can I?
Yeah, his career wasn't over. He held office later in life, but he got away. Paulus did not.
Yeah.
Paulus died. Yeah, in comparison, the casualties for the Carthaginians were anywhere from 5,700 to 8,000. So the casualties for the Romans were about 10 times higher.
What do you think they think?
That's a staggering margin of victory in an ancient battle. It's very impressive.
So the Carthaginians go in there and they got to clean up.
I would assume in the form of either burnings or mass graves, one of the two. Yeah. They're not going to be particularly gentle to the people that were just trying to murder them.
There was just pile of bodies.
Yeah,
and
a football stadium's worth
on top of each other. And there's a story of a Carthaginian being alive still under the pile, underneath a Roman soldier that was trapped with him too under the pile. But as they're buried together, the Roman soldier could only manage to bite the Carthaginian's nose and ears off in trying to kill this Carthaginian. All he had was his mouth to do it with, because his arms were pinned from other bodies. So this guy's under this pile of bodies, alive still, with no nose and ears. Like, holy shit!
God, that's fucked up. Yeah, the psychological torment of being a Roman soldier at this battle, I struggle to even get in the ballpark of guessing what that would be like, because it would become apparent pretty quickly what was going to happen to you. But this was going on all day. If you were in the center of that mass of Roman soldiers, you would know that you were going to die. You would be continuously suffering because you would be being pressed. It'd be hot.
Trying to get a breath of air that's not exhale and not hot air.
Yeah.
You have to jump. You have to climb up. You have to climb up on the shoulders to get cold, fresh air. Also, you're just breathing hot air. Like, if you've ever been to a festival concert, the crowd, like the mosh pit, like you just want to breathe like regular air for a second.
You'll feel the whole crowd move, like that was one
exactly,
like your weight pushing you all over the place.
Exactly, like when you're at a big show at a big like theater that's general admission, and then the crowd is swaying. That's what this crowd is probably like, because you cannot move your arms. You know, you can only crowd surf, like, hey, boost me up, mom. Yeah,
but their behavior is going to be vastly different from that crowd because they all know they're going to die.
Yeah, chewing off faces.
God, it must have been just so brutal. Well, and because this effect was so horrifying, there were Roman soldiers found that had dug holes in the ground and buried their own heads in it to kill themselves, to get the sweet release of death before the Carthaginian army could do it for them. Well, how frightening would it be to drive somebody to suicide? It's got to be just horrifying to be a part of.
Do you think that was a man that was in the crowd standing up, like, or do you think that was a man that was buried in the pile and like couldn't get free?
At least from my reading, it was sort of implied that it was more than one person who had done this.
Like during the combat?
Yeah.
Or while they're buried in the bodies and they can't get out. Like, just think of the quicker, easier ways you could get out of that crowd if you're trying to kill yourself.
I mean, aren't most of them holding sharp stuff? Did they not realize what would, like...
Couldn't they like make deals like, I'll kill you, you kill me, like we each stab each other in the jugular? Like,
maybe there was some kind of religious thing that kept them from cutting themselves. Who knows? But that does definitely seem to be an easier method than burying your own head in the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how hard would it be to just like unsheath your sword a little bit and just like scrape your wrists on it till you bleed to death? That seems like a way more desirable way out than burying my head in the ground.
When you're burying your head in the dirt, you're missing out on all that awesome memories.
Well, you're tall. You could probably see some shit. I wouldn't be seeing a goddamn thing. So, but obviously, the defeat at the Battle of Cannae threw the Roman population into panic again, or still. I doubt anybody expected a double consular army to fail to bring down Hannibal, but it did, and was slaughtered in the process. Hannibal continued to wreak havoc across the Italian peninsula for a while, but eventually the Romans kind of got their shit together, came out of disarray, and managed to win the Second Punic War, fully establishing the Roman Republic as completely dominant around the Western Mediterranean. It wound up being a massive, massive victory for Carthage, and a really fucked up day. That's why we're talking about it. So what do you guys think? How do you think these ancient battles would have affected all the soldiers that participated in them? If you have any thoughts, you can tweet them to us at dinnerandhellpod. You could email us at dinnerandhellpodcast@gmail.com, or on Facebook, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on iTunes. Oh, and as always, thank you to the Dinner in Hell band playing us out. Ron Maiden, you've been great tonight. It's been such a pleasure to record this podcast with you.
I had a blast doing it.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Good night.